أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. Abraham Lincoln gave as a gift to a man named Abd-al-Qadir who fought the French invasion and occupation of Algeria for 15 years in a public jihad, fi sabilillah, against French resistance. Abraham Lincoln gave this man two Colt pistols as a gift for a heroic deed that he would do in order to earn these gifts, along with gifts from the Pope, the Ottoman Empire, even the French Legion, which he fought for over 15 years, recognized him and honored him by the French Legion, and also gave him an annual stipend of 150,000 francs per year. So who is Abd-al-Qadir and what can we learn about him? Well, to understand that, we have to go back to the time when Algiers was occupied by the French. And to go back to this time, the French had sent an occupational force of about 35,000 soldiers, 600 ships to blockade Algiers. To make a long story short, there was an affair and some insults happened to the French ambassador at the time, or whoever it was. Long story short, the French ended up invading Algiers. It was one of the most barbaric, most violent invasion that you can ever imagine. After invading Algiers, they participated in a campaign of terrorism, a campaign of quelling resistance that led to the death of over 850,000 Algiers, men, women, and children during this barbaric act. The French thought that invading Algiers would be easy after they fought off whoever it was that was in charge of Algiers, which was the Ottomans at that time, and the Ottoman Dey at that time had left. They thought, okay, that's it. The resistance over. These people are too barbaric and too backwards to even resist us. That wasn't until Amir Abd-al-Qadir came back from Hajj at a young man of about 24, and he led a jihad fi sabilillah against the French resistance. And this jihad lasted for 15 years with him and his men doing skirmishes and attacks against French Legion troops. After 15 years, unfortunately, he was no longer able to keep up the resistance. He was caught, and there was a deal made that he would go into exile and be given safe passage. And of course, he went to exile and was given safe passage. What happened later is, as the Ottoman Empire was breaking apart and collapsing, there was sectarian violence that happened in Syria between the Druze and the Christian Maronite population, and really on sectarian lines. During that fashion at that time, there was a huge mob of people that were going to the Christian quarters, and they were actively just doing what mobs do, which is killing and targeting Christian men, women, children, families, and all that. When Abd-al-Qadir heard about this man who had been fighting jihad fi sabilillah against the French, he did not allow that fight that he was doing against the French to tarnish his understanding of the world, and understood to protect civilians and to protect Christians, and there was no animosity or hatred for him and the Christian population. Abd-al-Qadir and his men went into these cities and they saved thousands of Christians from these riotous mobs. In fact, they got the Christians and they put them into a citadel, and that's where the majority of them stayed. Many of them he also brought into his own home. The story goes that when he brought these Christians to his own home, the mob came to his home and they demanded that Abd-al-Qadir release these people so they could kill them. And Abd-al-Qadir, being somebody who understands the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being a Sufi, being somebody who fought jihad fi sabilillah against the French for 15 years, he went out there and he told the entire crowd that the deen of Allah and the message of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam very clearly states that you cannot kill men, women, and children who are innocent. You cannot target people based on this religion. And he shamed this entire mob of people, so much so that the entire mob left. When the dust settled and the rioting stopped, he, Abd-al-Qadir, and his fellow troops saved 10,000 people from that mob. Because of this, the superpowers of the time really began to recognize Abd-al-Qadir. He was given a Gordon shotgun by Queen Victoria, who had ruled Britain for nearly 70 years. He was given gifts by the Pope at the time, and the Pope's rival, which is the Ottoman Khalifa and the Ottoman Sultan at the time as well. He was also given two Colt pistols by none other than Abraham Lincoln. Why? because his efforts of resisting invasion, his efforts of fighting occupation in order to be free, in order to yearn for freedom, was a message that resonated all around the world and especially in the United States. And it's a part of our history that's been forgotten, how Abraham Lincoln knew of Abd-al-Qadir and gave him this gift. And I hope that all of us this Ramadan will begin to remember the story of Abd-al-Qadir, remember how he influenced the world, how his understanding of the deen of Allah and putting himself and his men in sacrifice to save innocent men, women, and children from mobs, and how he berated the mob that was there, while also fighting for 15 years against French resistance and becoming a legend, as it were. Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak.